This is Black Bear Brigade here with the man behind HBAMN, Edward Williams, and we're here to talk about blood pressure today. It's November right now. Health and wellness is a big thing, especially part for men's right now. So, we wanted to get in here and have this conversation with him about blood pressure, talk about some of the myths behind blood pressure, and get behind understanding, how to manage blood pressure better than what we have been doing. There's a stigma in the community about how, blood pressure is genetic and things like that. So we want to get behind some of the truth behind that. So Edward, I know you're a certified physician assistant. I know you do some coaching and things like that. So give us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, first of all, brother, I appreciate your work. I appreciate you inviting me on. Love what you're doing. I feel like it's important, and I love how you're also integrating health into your business as well. So, as far as me, like you said, I'm a PA, I'm a physician assistant. I'm the founder and creator of Health by Any Means Necessary, also known as HBAMN. In addition to that, I've been personal training for years now, over 10, maybe 15 years now. I'm also a nutritionist. And the idea of the business, Health by Any Means Necessary, is to radically improve the health conditions of our community by any means necessary. And to really do that, had to really go back to the basics, had to really start at the root. And the name by any means necessary really came from Malcolm X, came from a quote from Malcolm X. He talks about how this country only deals with the superficial issues because dealing with superficial issues is highly profitable. And so he always said that you want to get to the actual, if you want to actually solve something, you have to actually go to the root of the problem. And so this took me on a long journey as far as really figuring out, why are we so sick in the African-American community? Why are we so high on these charts when it comes to high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, so on and so forth. And, when you look at people from that continent of Africa, our relatives from the continent of Africa, they don't see a lot of these conditions that we face here in America. So it stands to reason that if this thing is genetic and those are our relatives, those are our direct relatives, then we should be, or they should be facing the same things that we're facing as pertains to diabetes, high blood pressure, X, Y, Z. And so those things weren't adding up. And so I really wanted to figure out why this was happening at such a high rate. The answers that I was getting from the medical textbooks and my schooling and everything like that didn't suffice. So I had to really dig deep and figure it out. And that all started with basic anatomy, physiology, really understanding how the body works and what makes the body operate in a way that would not be seen as beneficial to our health.
Okay.
And and so it just took me on a long journey. And then, we come to the point where I'm saying things that are against the grain, such as high blood pressure is not a disease, diabetes is not a disease. These things are not run in our family. They're not genetic. They're absolutely preventable. And many of the other things that you may have read about or heard me say.
Okay, so let's touch on the predestined piece, right? So it's not genetic. So circle back on that and explain that piece of it.
Yeah. So we hear it all the time. My blood pressure's high, but it runs in my family. Mama got it, daddy got it. My brother and sisters got it, so I'm gonna get it too.
Right.
Well, there's multiple things wrong with this statement. The biggest one being is that it's not true. So once again, if I was to ask you, if I came to you and I said, yo, look, brother, my blood pressure's running a little high, my weight's a little up there as well too, and I don't want to take medications, what should I do to actually improve my health? What would you tell me to do?
They tell you diet and exercise.
That's what you would tell me to do, right?
Right.
Now, if this was something genetic, if I told you I had type 1 diabetes, or if I told you I had a genetic disease, and we understand that your genes means if it was genetic, there's nothing you can really do about it because
right.
You can only manage it. You can only deal with it. However, if it's not genetic and if there's something that you can actually do to improve it, this doesn't make it a genetic disease. This makes it a lifestyle disease. And like I said, I use the word disease loosely because disease means an actual dysfunction. We can talk about later why this is not a dysfunction when we talk about high blood pressure. But most people will give you advice as far as, eat better, move a little bit more, stop stressing. These are all lifestyle recommendations, And so if these are lifestyle recommendations to correct a quote unquote disease, this means that this disease is not genetic. This disease is based on, it's a conditional disease or condition. So when it's genetic, there's nothing you can do about it. The next part that's wrong with the statement is that once you start saying this over and over, runs in my family, runs in my family, you're creating a mantra. This is an affirmation. And so pretty much what you're doing is you're embedding into your psyche that this is something that's going to happen. If you already believe that it's going to happen, when you go to the doctor's office and they're telling you that your blood pressure is a little bit increased or your blood pressure is high or it's time for blood pressure medications, the person is less likely to actually fight and say, yo, what do I need to do? I don't want to take these medications. They're more so to be like, it was a matter of time, like this happens to everybody, this happens to everybody in my family. And so you're a little bit more acceptable of the idea of taking medications or being labeled as having a disease. And that comes from years and years and years of conditioning, and not when it comes from my family, they're not doing it out of a place of, wishing harm on us. They're just doing it out of a place of habit. We say it all the time in our community. It just runs in our family, runs in our family. But like I said, this is a mantra. It's a affirmation that we're claiming, and it's not something that's actually been scientifically proven because they're still bouncing back and forth about what gene in African Americans actually make them actually put them at higher risk for high blood pressure. And there is no gene. There is no high blood pressure gene. It's the actual lifestyle.
Okay. Let's touch on the stress piece, right? So you mentioned stress actually raises the blood pressure. So how does the effects of stress have on your blood pressure?
Yeah, so first thing we need to understand is that when we're talking about stress, most people think about psychological stress. We think about anxiety, depression, fear. We think about those things. But stress in of itself can be broken down into two parts. We have eustress, spelled EUSTRESS. ESS, and then we have distress. So eustress is a stressor that is seen or perceived by the body as being beneficial. This would be things such as lifting weights, running, stretching. These are things that are seen as beneficial. Distress will be a type of stress that is seen as it decreases the health. Your body doesn't perceive it as being beneficial at all. Now, within eustress and distress, we have three types of stresses that go along with it. You have physical stress, chemical stress, and psychological stress. Physical stress, like I said before, that would be something like running. That would be something like lifting weights. Even dropping a weight on your toe is a physical stressor. That's an injury. And also lack of sleep. These are physical stressors. Chemical stress will be something that we would get from smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, also pollutants in the air, chemicals, also additives and preservatives in the food. So all these stress, these chemicals that would actually put stress on the body, they fall into the realm of chemical stressor. Also an imbalance in vitamins and minerals would be also be a chemical stressor. And then we have the psychological stress. This would be things such as, like we talked about, anxiety, fear, doubt, constantly worrying about, bills, hating your job, disliking the place that you live, or a person you live with, or just taking on the role as a man and you feel like you're not ready for it, or it was dropped on you, or feeling like you're a target constantly in society. These are all stressors. Those are psychological stressors. And so within those three types of stressors, this can affect your health globally, systemically, holistically. And more specifically, when we're talking about blood pressure and how those stressors can increase it, well, we need to understand that there's two things that your body wants to do. Well, there's one main thing that your body wants to do once it perceives stress, and that's survive. And in order for your body to survive, it's going to prepare you to either fight or flight, which is to run and get out of there. So although we're living here in America, we're living here in Georgia, South Carolina, Orlando, Florida, or wherever we're at, on a genetic level, our bodies are still back in Africa. And so we're still responding the same way that we're responding to life thousands and thousands of years ago. The thing about thousands and thousands of years ago is that we are dealing with a different reality. However, thousands of years ago, whenever our body perceives stress, it would be in the form of something we would consider to be pretty serious, like a lion or an animal or somebody, out to actually get you. And so in those cases, you got to go. You got to get ready to fight, or you got to get ready to flight. So when those things are taking places, there's going to be a redistribution of blood flow. In order for that redistribution of blood flow to take place, your body's going to need to increase the heart rate, increase the contractility of your heart, meaning how hard it's actually contracting. It's going to need to cause vasodilation, meaning increase the actual diameter of your arteries to increase blood flow to certain areas. It doesn't increase it to all areas. And so the areas that will be needed for that fight or flight will be things such as your legs, your arms. Also, it's going to cause vasoconstriction to the areas that are not needed at that point. This will be things such as your gut, also your reproduction. Now, when we look at just those two specific areas, your gut and your reproductive organs having a decrease in blood flow under the times of stress, this starts to make sense as far as why people who may have IBS or erectile dysfunction or any of these stresses that may relate to reproduction and gut health, they also have high levels of stressors. And that's because when you're in that fight or flight, you're trying not to get eaten. You're trying not to get killed. You're not worried about reproducing, and you're not worried about trying to break down your food.
Touching back on the, we have the medication, and we say, how can we improve or prevent? So what is the best ways, or what is your tips to improve or prevent the high blood pressure, so we can stay away from being on medication and things like that?
The first way is it deals with the actual mindset, the mentality, and that is to understand that this is not yours. So you can't continue to claim something that doesn't belong to you. You can't continue to say that this just runs in my family. You can't continue to accept it, because if you are already taking it as yours, that's going to prevent a lot of your potential progress. The next part to really understand is that high blood pressure is an adaptation. Your body's not doing this just because. High blood pressure should be seen the same way you see your check engine light. You get in your car, your check engine light is on. You're not going to take a piece of tape and place it over the check engine light. You're not going to cut the wire. You're not going to do these things.
Right.
What you're going to do is you're going to take it to AutoZone. You're going to take it to your mechanic. You're going to take it to somewhere else. The reason why you're going to do this is because you understand that placing a piece of tape over it or cutting the wire doesn't deal with the problem. You understand that the check engine light denotes the fact that you should probably check your engine. You should probably actually have a full oil change versus just putting a quart in there and riding around for more months. You should probably check that transmission fluid. You should probably actually check the filter. Like, you should actually check the engine. And we understand that if we just cover up the light, that something's going to go wrong. We know that something's going to go wrong, and that there's a price to that engine blowing up. There's a price to something going wrong, and we feel that in our pockets. This is why a lot of people may be more attentive to their actual vehicle versus their body. Now, when you take that car to your mechanic in your AutoZone, they're actually going to check your engine. They're actually going to try to figure out what's triggering the signal. And so I'm just saying all that to say this, that, high blood pressure is a sign. It's not a disease. It's a sign that we need to figure out what else is going on. Your question was,
so talking about improving blood pressure and staying away from, the meds, and more so of the preventive maintenance, right?
Right. And so, so along the second step would be to understand that the high blood pressure is an adaptation, It's a sign. It's not an actual disease. So we don't need to treat it like a disease. Once we understand that our bodies are adapting to something, we need to try to figure out what our body's adapting to. In most cases, it's the nutrition. In most cases, you do have a lot of people who are just stress heavy as far as what's making their blood pressure increase. But in most cases, we're looking at the actual foods. So we're taking in foods that are highly refined, highly processed. We need to understand that these foods are very distressful for the actual body. As far as the breaking down of it, the compensation that the body has to make to actually deal with it is likened to metabolic havoc. So drinking the juices, the sodas, and even the overconsumption of alcohol, liquor, smoking cigarettes, eating foods that are high in preservatives and additives, processed foods in general, all these things cause vasoconstriction. They cause damage to the lining of the artery, which is the endothelium. They also cause inflammation in many cases, especially when we're talking about trans fats and cigarettes. And so when it happens once or twice, the body can deal with that just fine. But when we're talking about on a daily basis, multiple times a day, the body's going to have to deal with it the best way it can. And this is when high blood pressure comes into play, because that injury to the lining of the artery, your body's going to respond the same way if you took a razor and sliced your arm or cut yourself or anything like that. The same process that it takes that cut to heal, the lining of your artery is going to go through a very similar process, which is one, the blood is going to clot up, right? The blood is going to start to thicken because it has to stop bleeding. From the thickening of that blood, you're now going to go through a process of creating a scab. Once that scab is created, it's going to take a while before that scab becomes looking back like your skin again, scar tissue. Now, what happens if you cut that arm and the healing process starts tomorrow, but I go back and I cut it again, and the healing process starts tomorrow, and I go back and cut it again. So this is what we're doing when we're constantly taking in these foods and these drinks and all these other things that are not healthful to us. We're constantly just insulting the artery. We're constantly just assaulting the artery, on a daily basis. So largely, I recommend people to, start where you're at, with, as far as the food, because most people understand that a lot of food we're eating is just not healthy. A lot of us understand that on a general basis. But a lot of people, especially with men, I see a lot of results when I can get them to switch from the juices over to water. Like, how can we cut out the sodas, the juices? How can we cut out the liquids and, focus on water? And, women don't like this, especially when I'm seeing husband-wives patients, because the men get results a little bit faster than the women, and they really don't like it because they're like, I'm doing the same thing, and he over here losing 10 pounds. So if I can get the men to cut out the sodas and the juices and, the overconsumption of the beers, they see results pretty quickly, not only with just the weight, but also with the blood pressure, because there's not as much stress that the blood pressure needs to respond to. And so if I can get them to drink predominantly water, we're going to see a lot of progress. If I get them to do this for 2 weeks, within 2 weeks, when I get them to come back and all they've been drinking is just water, of course, I tell them to, try to eat reasonable, but I try not to get too detailed or too specific yet, because it's just overwhelming, especially if you have a job that you dislike, money is an issue, the light bills, all these things going on. And it's like, just give me one thing that I can do. Let me try it out for 2 weeks and see what happens. And that's what happens. They come back in for that second week, check the blood pressure, went down 10 points, check the weight, you lost 5 points, 5 pounds. Also, the energy levels. So there's so many things that can happen within that 2 weeks. And a lot of time, well, all the time, consistency is the key when we're talking about that. So I tell people to start where you're at. Maybe for some people, drinking predominantly water is not reasonable for them. So I work, and this part works for mostly everybody. It takes some convincing, but I ask them how many times are they eating. A lot of people tell me that they're eating 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, X, Y, Z, and they know they need to eat more or something like that. Here at HBAMN, our doctrine, our take on that is very different. Fasting is my gospel. I don't know if you kind of heard me talk about fasting or anything like that, but fasting is my gospel. There's so much to be said about the health effects of fasting. And so once again, the men kill it. On my side, when I get the men to start fasting, they kill it and they see results fast. Like, that's the thing that they can see results on the fastest. And I have them, I put them on a regimen of just 16 hours. So, pretty much for most of them, this just equals them not eating breakfast. And I go through and I dispel the myths about the importance of having breakfast. Yes, breakfast is important, but we need to break down the word breakfast. It's called break fast. Breakfast is just a period that you're breaking your fast. Breakfast does not have an actual time tied to it. So that means that if you eat, your first meal is at noon, then that's your breakfast. Your first meal is at 2 o'clock, then that's your breakfast. Breakfast does not have to be 8 o'clock in the morning. And if you actually ask a lot of people, if they're hungry when they eat that breakfast, most people are not hungry. They're just eating because they was told that it's the most important part of the meal of the day. They were told that it's going to regulate their metabolism. They were told that if they don't eat breakfast, they're going to overeat later on. All these other things that, we go through in my blog, and we dispel the myth, and we give you the actual truth of it. But also, if you just look back at our ancestors, you know, trying to eat 6 meals a day was just not realistic. It was not realistic, nor was it anything needed. So once people start fasting, specifically men, they see results extremely fast. So if you're not a fan of changing what you're drinking, you're not a fan of changing what you're eating, okay, cool. I recommend it. I recommend it. But can I at least get you down to 1 meal a day? And most people say, all right, yeah, I'll try that. I'll try that after I get out the actual myths. And if we can stick in a 24-hour in there as well too, they take off. And this one, once I get them to do it for 1 week, man, they take it on as a lifestyle because they start feeling more energy. They start feeling things that are not even related to their blood pressure or their weight.
Okay.
They start feeling like, yo, I'm more alert. I just read this book in 3 days. I never could do that before. Like, just certain things start happening, man. Like, they start tapping into a whole nother person that is them that they weren't familiar with. So fasting is my gospel. Yeah, so the foods, the drink. Also, we need to control our level of psychological stresses. I get it that you know, many of us may dislike our jobs, our locations, you know, and other things going on. But once we understand that this affects your life, we need to ask ourselves, you know, is this person that I dislike at work that important in my life that I should allow them to increase my blood pressure, cause damage to my arteries, and thus shorten my lifespan? Is this person that I dislike so much that important that it should shorten my lifespan? And so this leads us to do more inner work as far as how we respond to people, or how we respond to situations in general. Too many times and it's easy to happen at work, but we allow the work to control us versus we control ourselves at work. And we just pretty much, once that's taking place, we just pretty much become a victim of circumstance. We become a victim of the situation and the environment. Whereas we need to remember to pull ourselves out of that situation. This is 8 hours. This is a tool for money, so I can do what I need to do for my family. This is not real life. We need to put that job or whatever it is in place. We need to put that person in place. We need to put our perceptions of these things in place, because too many times we take it on as, oh, this is life, like this is what it is, like, oh my goodness, this is stressful. And what our bodies start doing is it starts responding to that story you're telling it, because perception is based on what you're telling your subconscious mind. And so if we're telling ourselves that I hate this person, I'm gonna kill it, and your body's gonna be like, all right, you want to kill him? Let's rev up this cortisol. Let's rev up this epinephrine. Let's rev up. And so you're constantly doing these things, which means that your heart rate's going to increase. The contractility of your heart is going to increase. The vasoconstriction is going to increase. The blood viscosity is going to increase. So all these things that we're trying to eat healthy for is being overridden by the psychological side. So this is why the mindset is the most important part of this thing, because you can eat kale all day. You can do 1,000 sit-ups. You can run marathons. But if you're over here and your mindset is not aligned with your goals, then it's a wrap. You can do all those things, but it's a wrap at the end of the day. So we got to deal with the foundation, which is the mindset, the psychological aspect. And we got to gain back they call it, you know, captain of your ship. You got to become the captain of your mindset again. You got to become the captain of your mindset and control your emotions, control your response, control your perception. You know, many times we may not like the car we're driving, the place we're living, all these things, but the reason we don't like it is more so based on how society has told us or made us believe that it should be. Whereas if you were to take an organic look at how you really feel about it, you were like, it don't really bother me. But I know society kind of expects me to be flossing right now. Right. But you might be like, yo, this thing get me to point A and point B. I'm Gucci, you know? And so we need to really pull back the mask and see, you know, if the things that we're really feeling is based on our own perceptions and our own thoughts organically, because a lot of times it's not. Yeah, so I mean, we have to control that, as well as social media. You know, we think that consumption deals with only eating, but consumption comes in the form of what you're hearing, what you're seeing, also the energy that you're consuming. You know, people around you as well too. And so when you're on the Instagram, the Facebook, and you're watching, ratchetness, whether it be fights, women fighting and pulling each other hair out, and men fighting and calling each other derogatory names and bringing each other down, or a Facebook Live, or somebody who looks like you, walk like you, talk like you, being shouted on Facebook Live.
Right.
All these things are extremely stressful. And we think that they don't affect us, but they affect us very much. You see, like I said, if you watch it the first time, years ago, when this whole Facebook thing Live started really popping off, and you saw it, you might have saw a brother or sister get killed on Facebook Live, and that affected you. The same way, if you saw somebody get killed in real time, it affected you. Like it might mess with you, but when you see it over and over and over and over again, it desensitizes you on a conscious level. But subconsciously, you're still stressed out because you see yourself getting killed. You see your brother or sister getting killed. And so our bodies are responding to that. And that's called neurocinematic trauma. Neurocinematic is the science of how what's seen on the big screen affects us neurologically. And so based on how you can relate to what's being seen on the big screen determines how what's seen on the big screen affects you. So you can have two people watching a movie, and this could be any one of those movies that they drop every 4 months or every quarter relating to slavery. And so you can have two people watching the same movie, and they can have very different outcomes as far as how they perceive it. If the person who's getting beat, whipped, hung, raped, dragged, like whatever, the person who's getting the abuse, if that person looks like the other person who's watching it, they're going to resonate with it more because they see themselves in that person.
True.
Whereas the person who can't relate to it, and it's just a story to them, it's not going to relate the same. You're not going to resonate the same way. And this is why we have to really be careful and guard our psyche as far as the things that we're taking on a daily basis. These things affect us as if they were happening to us on a subconscious level. And so you might be watching somebody get beat up on Facebook Live. Your body's taking it as, your subconscious mind's taking it as you're in danger. Therefore, we need to gear up to protect ourselves. So it's not benign. I just need people to actually know that is one of the steps as well to controlling our environment, both physical and also social media as well too.
Right. So on the diet tip again, you left out something that I know that you have. So the pressure teas, right? So
Yes.
The tea that you have, how does that help with the blood pressure as well?
Yeah, so pressure tea is a herbal tea. It's an herbal loose leaf tea. And what we did is we combined several ingredients. The main ingredient being hibiscus. The reason why I made hibiscus the main ingredient is because I based it off of several studies, but not just several studies that were done on just anybody. These studies were done on actual Africans, Nigerians. And so what the study showed is that they took a group of people, Nigerians, and they had them take, one group was taking the actual blood pressure medication, lisinopril. They did this study twice. With lisinopril, which is one of the top selling blood pressure medications. And the next study they did it with hydrochlorothiazide, which is the top prescribed medication for African Americans. So in both studies, this is how it played out essentially. When you took the group who were taking the blood pressure medication versus the group who was just drinking hibiscus tea versus the group who was just doing the placebo, like they weren't taking anything, they were just going to be neutral, dummy pills, sugar pills, what they call it. Of course, the group A, the medicated group, of course, you saw a decrease in their blood pressure. With hibiscus, the group that was drinking hibiscus tea, you saw a decrease in their blood pressure as well. With the placebo, you didn't see anything. It was flatline pretty much. Now, as far as which group, A or B, had the bigger decrease, it was the hibiscus group. Hibiscus beat out, in one study, it was by 3 points. Another study was like by 6 points. Okay. So, all right, cool. Both of them decreased blood pressure. Cool. Now, what they want to see is what's going to happen when we take these people off of the medication and off of the tea. Well, when you took group A off of the blood pressure medication, within a week or two, the blood pressure started to creep back up. No, I'm sorry, not even a week or two. Within that same week, the blood pressure started to creep back up. Within 2 weeks, you see the blood pressure is essentially right back where it started. However, we're talking about the actual group B, the group that was drinking the hibiscus tea, and this is in both studies. Not only did we not see an increase, the actual blood pressure remained essentially the same for the group that was only drinking the hibiscus tea. And this remained the same way for several weeks. Now we have to go back to why. Why is this happening? That's because, once again, the blood pressure medication is just sweeping dirt in the rug. Eventually, you're going to find that dirt if you lift it. It's not doing anything with it. It's just, it's a gimmick. It's a trick. Whereas with the actual hibiscus tea, we're talking about phytonutrients in that tea that actually help repair the lining of the artery. So the blood pressure medication doesn't do any kind of repairing whatsoever. They block receptors. They force your body to vasodilate. They force your body to decrease the actual contractility of the heart. Whereas with the so they go in on goon, like pretty much a goon squad. Like they come in and they kick in doors. They do what they want to do. They they come and shoot. They come in, they do what they do. Right. Whereas the hibiscus tea and with food, it's a mutually beneficial relationship. They're coming in with respect. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Can I do this? The answer is yes or no. Yes, we move to the next stage. And so your body is in conformity with the actual tea and allowing the nutrients of that tea to actually repair the lining of the arteries. When the arteries are being repaired, there is no need for the blood pressure to be as high. And so the blood pressure naturally goes down. And so before you see an improvement in the actual blood pressure with the actual tea, work was done. Work was done to repair the actual lining. So healing took place. Okay. And then you saw the blood pressure go down. With the medications, straight goon style, man. They're just kicked in the doors.
Okay. So I know when we go to the, a lot of times we go get our physicals. I get my yearly physical and things like that. And then, we always have, some people have the conversation with the healthcare provider about what's going on. Some people kind of skip it and be like, all right, well, they told me to do this. Let me go ahead and do this or fulfill this prescription. Sometimes, I know a lot of times they give me prescriptions because my body, meds don't really work on my body like that. So a lot of times they give me prescriptions. I don't even go fill them sometimes, right? So how do I guess we make sure we get the most out of our healthcare provider instead of them just farming pills off on us saying, hey, do this, when we know that it's not really the right thing that we need to do.
Yeah, so the very first thing you have to do is make sure you have a healthcare provider that is open and willing to actually work with you as a patient. This is how it originally started off, and this is the way it should be. Now, we can go into about why it's no longer that way and why doctors are stressed and why the reimbursements are not high. That's a whole different situation, but there's multiple things at play. So you need to have a healthcare provider that's actually willing to work with you versus flex on you. You're going to do this, you're going to do that, and that's just what it's going to be. Don't ask me no questions. How dare you ask me questions? You see this white coat? You see this other coat? You see that degree on the wall? I'm killing it right now. I know more than you. You don't know nothing. So just sit there. So if you got a provider like that, run, find you another one. If your health insurance will allow you to do that, because you have to find someone in network. So there's so many restrictions when you're dealing with it. So the first thing, like I said, is have an open provider. Next, you need to, the patient themselves needs to understand the visit almost more than the actual physician they're going to see. What are you going there for? Are you going there for actual medical condition? Well, you should already have a general idea of what that condition is, because if you don't, you're pretty much going in there unarmed. If you don't have the information on what it is, I can tell you do this, I can tell you do that, I can tell you do this. You don't know if I'm right or wrong. Therefore, when it comes time for questioning, you don't even have quality questions. And once again, the quality of a question determines the quality of your health. So if I'm telling you, take this blood pressure medication, because if you don't, you're going to die because it's going to blow your kidneys out and it's going to cause you to have a stroke. You don't know if I'm telling the truth or not. But what you do know is I scared the shit out of you. And so now you want to actually do whatever you have to do to make sure that doesn't happen to you. However, if you come in there with a base, you don't have to know like in depth and go into all these books, but if you have a basic level, a basic understanding of anatomy and physiology, and this is what I call health defense. If you have a basic level of understanding of anatomy and physiology, a basic level of understanding of high blood pressure or whatever it is you're dealing with, then you can formulate better questions. You can ask your doctor things such as, okay, wait, before we do the blood pressure medication, is there anything else I can do to actually improve my blood pressure? Why is my blood pressure increased? oh, really? It runs in my family? But I have a sister who's, she's 10 years older than me and she doesn't have that. Well, why does she not have it? Or why does, my little brother? Or at one point, or you ask questions like, how does food play a part in this? You start asking questions, but once again, these are quality questions and they require you to have some type of knowledge about yourself. But if you're already believing that you're doomed and you're destined, you're not going to ask these questions because once again, you believe that it was just a matter of time anyway. So go into the relationship trying to work with your provider. So having an open provider, having a decent level of information about the health condition itself, these are things that are going to take you further versus just being handed prescriptions. So as long as you know to ask for a different way if there is one, and if there is not one, why not? Ask them, what resources do you have for me to actually read up on? What can I be eating or doing to actually improve these things? So always try to find the natural way first, because like I said, these medications, they all have side effects. That's just how they work. They chemically alter the physiology of the body, which is going to lead to side effects. You can't really get around that. So that's what I recommend. That's what it means to work with your provider, and that's what I recommend.
Okay. And wrapping up now, as you were going through and starting your business, what is one thing, one book, podcast, conference, something that has helped you get things going the way you want to?
A huge help was Dr. Boyce Watkins, which I know you're familiar with.
Right, definitely.
Julian Gordon is a beast, and I mean that in the most compassionate way possible. He's nice with it, man. These brothers are nice with it. Though it's one thing, there's plenty of podcasts and books. I have tons and tons of books, but for me, it was about just being me. I'm a little different, you know what I'm saying? At least that's what I'm told. When people come in the room and they see me getting ready to visit them, they're kind of expecting a different type of approach, and it's not that way. And even when I'm, interacting with other business members, I'm a little bit more out there as far as how I am. I'm just me. And so seeing, a lot of these brothers out there who are successful just being them.
Right. And they definitely are just being them too.
Yeah. And it's like, yo, just go, just do it. Put in that work and go and do it. But also, hearing them and knowing that they have similar experiences that I have. They see things in a similar way. They understand certain struggles and, things that we go through. Whereas I have a lot of, I've been through masterminds, I've been through courses, a lot of things, but some of the recommendations just wasn't practical or realistic for me. I don't have a rich uncle. I don't have, like all these things, like they're talking about the loans and stuff like that from the bank. There's so many things that just were not realistic for me, And also, they touch on the mindset. Once again, for me, everything is mindset. Everything is mindset. And when you're starting a business and running a business, your mindset has to be in check, because that is the biggest thing that you have to control. That is the biggest thing that you have to control, because most of the stress and fears and doubts and worries, of course, is all in here. It's all in here. Learn how and just like those initial assaults, whether it be financial trouble. It's telling me my internet connection is unstable.
You're back now.
Okay. So I mean, in short, those would be my recommendations. Check out Julian Gordon. He's nice with it. He really gets it. He really gets it. And that's an understatement. So.
Okay. So if you can switch places with one person for a day, who would it be and why?
Man. I'm not really sure. I'm gonna probably need some time to think about that. It would probably be somebody that's already passed on, that's already transitioned. Is that can I answer like that?
That's cool.
Okay.
I'll cut you off guard with that one.
Okay. Yeah, it would. I would probably most likely go back to like I have a picture of my great grandfather on the wall, and he was actually born into slavery. And when he got out of slavery, he hustled up money to actually buy this large land that we actually grew up on. He turned it into a farm and just put in that work like on a daily basis over and over and over and over. And it humbles me a lot because when I look at what I'm going through and some of the pitfalls and the things that I'm learning and everything like that, and you get stressed and you want to kind of put your head in the hole and you're like, oh man, this isn't working out. Right. And I immediately think about like what was he facing? Like he was actually enslaved, and this man still showed up and showed out, bought all these acres of land, and did what he did, turn into a farm, was successful. And so I'm like, yo, you built for this, like you got this. So it would, if I could trade places for one day, it would be to kind of look through the eyes of somebody like him and or ancestor who prevailed through like some of the greatest atrocities that the world has ever seen. It will be them.
Okay. Last question. What tool do you use daily that helps you stay organized or at least helps you run things the way you need to run?
I'm not organized, brother.
what type of tools have you adapted that actually help you get things taken care of on a day-to-day basis?
So right now I have a team that I work with, a group of great sisters, man. They helped me out so much. They're tremendous. We use Slack. We use there's I'm switching over to it's called Asana. It's kind of like Trello. It's pretty much a team, like a teamwork. They keep me in line. And then I have some other people that I work with to help out as well too. And we use those communication tools. But the actual work board, the teamwork board really, really helps out because you see I have all these whiteboards behind me. I have to see things. I have to know what I'm attacking. I have to know what I'm working on. Also, another thing that helped out was Julian Gordon's workbook.
Okay.
It's the Entrepreneur New Year.
Yeah.
I have it somewhere around here, but his workbook really helps out because so many times we're trying to eat an elephant. We're trying to eat a whole entire elephant just like that. But many times we need to break down those big, audacious goals into like little pieces and focus on several pieces a day and continuously execute on them on a daily basis. And stay consistent with that as much as possible because when you look back in 6 months, you'll be like, yo, I just accomplished this by doing this much a day. And this is the compound effect. Those things add up. So yeah, those tools help out. And also monitoring my social media activity as well too. I do a lot of fasting for social media. I do a lot of when I'm on social media, a lot of times it's just for business. I have to control that a lot because you can get into a rabbit hole where you're trying to figure out how am I looking at talking carrots right now? How did I get here?
Yeah.
That's what it'll do.
Man, I'll feel you on the social media because I know I had last October I got kicked off Facebook, so that stint actually got me transitioned and my mindset changed to actually focus on some other things while I was off, and then I had to get back on for business purposes, and I'm kind of like, I don't want to get back on, but that's the only way you can run a lot of things down because everything is tied into Facebook and Instagram and things like that.
Right.
It was.
I'll tell you what. When I look back throughout the years, you can see like little peaks of growth. As far as the revenue and the financial side, and of course, it's an ugly graph, but you can see like certain peaks, and I've been able to connect several correlations with those peaks, and one of it deals with fasting from social media.
Okay.
Because when I fast from social media, I'm really just minding my business now. Like I'm pulling myself out of all of that stimuli, and I'm just focusing on self. Like I'm just focusing on business. I'm focusing on inner work. Another thing that I've been able to see a high correlation. I mean, like, and this probably has one of the highest correlations with progress has been books. I not even feel like I know that the more I read, the more we earn here at this business. And so the more I educate myself learn about things, put information to my head, and then actually apply it, there's been a high correlation as it pertains to actually generating revenue.
Okay.
So I definitely recommend, if you can't, if you find if you're having a hard time to actually sit down and read, then pick up audiobooks. Audiobooks have been great. You just want to keep continuously invest in yourself. You want to continuously invest in yourself because you already have everything you need to actually get to your goals. But we just have to be able to, like you said, organize yourself, put certain things in proper perspective, and then have a little bit of know-how how to actually execute on these things. And books really help out with that.
All right. And finally, how can they reach you?
So if you want to reach me, you can go to the website hbam.com. HBAM is spelled HBAMN. Once again, that stands for health by any means necessary. Also, you can just email me, support@hbam.com. You can reach me on Facebook and social media. On Instagram, it is health BAMN. And on social media, you can just type in HBAM. On Facebook, you just type in HBAM. And also, we'll be at the We Buy Black convention coming up next week. We'll be at the We Buy Black convention. So if you're in Atlanta, Georgia, we'll see you out there as well.
All right. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man.
Look at the convention. I won't be able to make it out to that one this year, but hopefully I'll be at the next one.
For sure, man. Like I said, man, we appreciate your work. Appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate the passion you have for it as well, too, man. So keep on doing it.
We all out here trying to get some things done, brother.
I see you. Beard looking nice, bro.
I appreciate it, man.